Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into something I think you'll find pretty interesting. We're talking about understanding autism in adults.
Okay.
We've got some unique sources for this one, a website that's all about this. Um, affordable ABA therapy.
Uh,
Now, you might be asking, what is ABA therapy?
yeah.
It stands for Applied Behavior Analysis, and it's this type of therapy that's often used to help autistic individuals develop certain skills and behaviors.
Okay.
This website has a whole section all about adult autism, and
Mm.
honestly, it's packed with insights that really challenge the common narratives
Right.
that you often hear about autism.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to explore those and really try to tackle the question, does research always match up with what autistic adults experience in their lives?
That's a really good question. While research can offer valuable information, this website highlights some pretty important limitations.
Okay.
For instance, one article talks about how a lot of autism research relies on really small sample sizes.
Mm-hmm.
And, imagine trying to understand an entire population, like a whole country, just by talking to like a handful of people.
Right.
You'd probably miss a lot of important perspectives, right?
But, yeah.
Well, it's kind of the same with autism research. Small sample sizes can really skew the results and make it difficult to draw accurate conclusions about the experiences of autistic adults as a whole.
So it's like getting a glimpse of one tiny piece of a giant puzzle?
Exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But how does this website connect these limitations, these research limitations, to the actual day-to-day reality of autistic adults?
Well, they dive into some specific areas where those research findings might not match up with your personal experience.
Okay.
Like take social skills, for example.
Okay.
A lot of research emphasizes the social challenges that autistic individuals might face, but a lot of autistic adults actually find themselves really comfortable and thriving in certain social situations.
Yeah, I've heard that before, that idea that autistic people struggle with social interaction.
Uh,
But this website's saying that's not the whole picture.
Exactly. It's not the whole picture.
Okay.
This website is highlighting that social interaction it's complex for everyone,
Mm,
and it looks different for different people.
right.
For some autistic adults, social situations that are really structured and predictable might be more comfortable.
Right.
They might enjoy deep conversations about shared interests rather than the kind of small talk that many neurotypical people engage in.
Right.
It's about recognizing that there's no one size fits all when it comes to social skills.
Yeah.
And what works for one person might not work for another.
So if you're an autistic adult listening to this, you might be thinking, hold on, my experience with social interaction doesn't necessarily align with what some research studies say.
Right.
This website's kind of suggesting that research can sometimes paint a very narrow picture of autism, one that doesn't capture the full spectrum of experiences.
Yeah. That's exactly it. And this website does a great job of challenging that narrow view by highlighting another area where research often falls short.
Okay.
The tendency to focus on deficits
Mm.
rather than strengths. You see
Mhm.
this a lot in research that emphasizes what autistic people supposedly lack, like certain social skills, rather than recognizing the unique strengths and talents they bring to the table.
That's fascinating because I've read some research that suggests that autistic individuals often excel in areas like pattern recognition and attention to detail and logical thinking
Yeah.
skills that are so valuable in many fields.
Precisely. And this website emphasizes that when we focus only on deficits, we miss out on recognizing the incredible potential that autistic individuals possess.
Right.
It's like looking at this beautiful, intricate tapestry and only seeing the tiny flaws instead of appreciating the overall work of art.
So for our listeners, if you've ever felt like research or common perceptions of autism don't accurately reflect your strengths and abilities, you're not alone.
Mm.
This website's really challenging those narrow views
Mhm.
and encourages a more holistic understanding of autism,
Yes.
one that celebrates neurodiversity.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another really crucial point that this website emphasizes the importance of centering autistic voices in the research process itself.
Okay.
Imagine someone trying to design like a car without ever consulting with drivers.
Right.
They might end up with a vehicle that looks great on paper, but doesn't actually meet the needs of the people who will be using it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right.
So you're saying that involving autistic individuals in every stage of research, from designing the study to interpreting the results,
Yes.
is crucial for ensuring that the research actually reflects their lived experiences.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that autistic individuals are the experts on their own lives and
Mhm.
experiences.
This reminds me of something else this website talks about, The idea that research on autism sometimes relies heavily on a medical model that frames autism as something to be fixed or cured, rather than acknowledging it as a natural variation in human neurology.
Yes, and this medical model can be really limiting because
Right.
it often leads to interventions that focus on changing autistic behaviors to conform to neurotypical norms rather than celebrating and supporting autistic individuals for who they are.
So it sounds like this website's advocating for a shift away from this medical model and towards a more accepting and inclusive understanding of autism. It's
Yes,
about valuing neurodiversity, right?
you got it. And that shift, it's not just about changing how we think about autism.
Mm-hmm.
It's about changing how we treat autistic individuals,
Yeah.
how we interact with them, and how
Yeah.
we create environments that support their well-being and allow them to thrive.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've talked about the limitations of research, the importance of centering autistic voices, and the need for a shift away from the medical model.
Uh-huh.
But before we move on, I kind of want to pause and make sure our listeners are with us. So much of what we're discussing today challenges those common assumptions about autism.
Mhm.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
What are some of the key takeaways that are resonating with you so far?
When we're talking about creating supportive environments, I think we should talk about the workplace.
Okay.
This website goes into detail about some specific challenges that autistic adults often face when it comes to, like, finding and maintaining a job.
Right.
And it really drives home how those research limitations that we talked about earlier can create real-world barriers.
That makes sense. Yeah, we talked about how research can often focus on deficits rather than strengths.
Mm-hmm.
I could see how that perspective could lead employers to overlook those unique talents
Exactly.
that autistic individuals can bring to the table.
Absolutely. One article on the website mentions a study that found a significant percentage of autistic adults are either unemployed or underemployed,
Wow.
even though they often have the skills and qualifications that would make them incredibly valuable employees.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with, misconceptions and a lack of understanding about autism in the workplace.
So what are some of those specific challenges that the website highlights?
Oh.
What are some things that, as an autistic adult, you might encounter in a typical work environment?
Well, one common issue is sensory overload
Yeah.
that can come with those traditional office settings.
Right.
Imagine like those bright fluorescent lights,
Yeah.
the constant hum of computers, people chattering around you.
Why?
All of those things can be incredibly distracting and even overwhelming for someone who has, sensory sensitivities.
That's something I'm starting to understand better now.
Uh-huh.
This website really emphasizes how those sensitivities aren't just about being picky or sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
They're real neurological differences that can make certain environments really hard to deal with.
Exactly. And it's not just the physical environment.
Okay.
The social dynamics of the workplace can be tough for autistic individuals. For example, a lot of autistic people find small talk to be draining
Mhm.
or confusing.
Right.
They might prefer to communicate more directly and straightforwardly.
Yep.
And this can be misinterpreted as being rude or lacking social skills,
Well,
when in reality, it's just, a different communication style.
right. So if you're an autistic person who thrives on that clear, concise communication,
Yeah.
you might find yourself struggling in a work environment where there's a lot of unspoken social rules and expectations.
Yeah.
That's got to be frustrating.
It can be. And this website emphasizes that it's not about autistic individuals needing to change who they are to fit in.
Right.
It's about employers creating more inclusive and accommodating workplaces.
So what are some things that employers can do to create a more autism-friendly work environment?
Right.
This website must give some practical tips, right?
It does. It suggests things like providing quiet spaces
Okay.
for employees to take a break from sensory stimulation,
Makes sense.
allowing for flexible work arrangements like working from home,
Okay.
and, making sure that communication is really clear and concise, both written and verbal.
Those sound like simple but really effective changes.
They really could be.
Yeah.
And, it's not just about making accommodations.
Right.
It's about recognizing the strengths that artistic individuals often bring to the table.
Right.
Their attention to detail, their ability to focus intensely on tasks,
Hmm.
their unique problem-solving skills.
So it's really about shifting that perspective from seeing autism as a deficit
Yes.
to seeing it as a valuable form of neurodiversity
Yeah,
that can really benefit a company.
exactly. And the website emphasizes this. When employers embrace neurodiversity, They actually create a more innovative,
Right.
a more creative, and ultimately more successful work environment for everybody.
I love that.
Right.
So we've talked a lot about what employers can do,
Yeah.
but what about the individual?
Uh-huh.
The autistic individual navigating the workplace?
Yeah.
What role does self-advocacy play in all of this?
Self-advocacy is huge. This website stresses knowing your rights, understanding your own needs,
Hmm.
and being able to communicate those needs to others.
Right.
And that's crucial for thriving in any environment,
Yeah.
but especially in the workplace.
So if you're an autistic person who needs a quiet workspace, or maybe you prefer written communication over verbal instructions, you need to feel empowered to communicate that to your employer.
Exactly. And that can be tough,
Yeah.
especially if you've been, conditioned to mask your autistic traits or to
Mm.
try and fit in with neurotypical expectations.
Right.
But this website emphasizes that self-advocacy is about honoring your needs
Yeah.
and advocating for what you need to do your best work.
And this website, it probably gives some tips
Mhm.
for developing those self-advocacy skills, right?
It does. It encourages autistic adults to learn about their legal rights,
Okay.
to practice assertive communication, and to connect with other autistic individuals
Okay.
who can share their experiences and offer support.
I'm just thinking about the power of finding your tribe, like finding a community of people who really get what you're going through.
It can make all the difference.
That can make all the difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This website highlights how important community is for autistic adults,
Right.
whether it's online or in person.
Yeah.
Connecting with others who share your experiences can really provide a sense of validation, a sense of belonging, and shared understanding.
Yeah.
And that can be incredibly empowering.
And that empowerment, that's what fuels self-advocacy, right?
Yes.
It's that sense of knowing you're not alone,
Uh-huh.
knowing that your experiences are valid, and knowing that you have the right
Mm-hmm.
to advocate for your needs.
You got it. It's about finding your voice
Mhm.
and using it to create a world that is more inclusive and more accepting of neurodiversity.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of self-advocacy for autistic individuals.
Yeah.
But where does the responsibility lie when it comes to bridging that gap
Right.
between research and reality?
Mm.
Is it all on autistic people to educate the world about their experiences?
That's a really important question. And this website acknowledges that while self-advocacy is crucial, it's not the only solution.
Okay.
We need systemic change.
Okay, break that down for us. What does systemic change look like in this context?
Well, for starters, it means more research that's conducted by and for autistic people,
Yeah.
research that centers their voices, their priorities, and their lived experiences.
Okay.
One article on this website specifically calls for increased funding for research projects that are led by autistic researchers
Right.
and that prioritize the perspectives of autistic individuals.
So it's about kind of shifting those power dynamics in research,
Exactly.
ensuring that autistic people have a say in what gets studied and how the findings are interpreted.
Exactly. And it's about moving beyond that medical model of autism
Okay.
and exploring the full spectrum of autistic experiences, including the strengths and talents and unique ways of being in the world that we've been discussing.
And it's not enough to just conduct this research.
Right.
It needs to be accessible to everyone, right? It
Exactly.
needs to be translated into practical information
Yes,
that autistic people, the families in their communities, can actually use.
you're absolutely right. The website emphasizes the importance of sharing those research findings in a way that is clear, concise, and easy to understand.
Right.
It's about making that information readily available
Right.
to everyone who needs it.
I'm also thinking about the way autism is portrayed in the media
Mm?
and in popular culture.
Yes,
We need more authentic representations of autism.
absolutely.
Representations that challenge those outdated stereotypes
Yes,
and that show the diversity of the autistic community.
you are absolutely right. This website points out that media representation plays a huge role in shaping how the public perceives autism.
Oh, absolutely.
When the only stories that we see
Right.
are the ones that focus on deficits or portray autistic individuals as one-dimensional characters.
Yeah,
It just reinforces those harmful stereotypes.
totally.
And it makes it harder for people to really understand the true complexities of autism.
So it's about advocating for more nuanced and accurate portrayals of autism in movies and TV shows and books, all forms of media, really.
Yes.
It's about showing the world that autistic people aren't a monolith,
Right.
that they're individuals
Yes.
with their own unique personalities and strengths and
Yes.
challenges.
And it's about making sure that autistic people are involved in the storytelling process. We
Yes.
need autistic writers, directors, actors, producers to bring their authentic voices and perspectives to the
Sure.
screen, to the
Yeah.
page.
That's so important.
Right.
It's about ensuring that autistic people have the power to tell their own stories
Yes.
and to shape the narratives that surround autism.
And, as we're talking about systemic change, it's important to remember that this isn't just about making things better for autistic people.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that when we create a world that values and supports neurodiversity, everyone benefits.
I love that point. It's not about charity or pity.
Right.
It's about recognizing the inherent value
Yes.
of different ways of thinking, being, and experiencing the world.
Exactly. When we embrace neurodiversity, we create a richer, a more vibrant, and more innovative society for everyone.
This has been such an insightful conversation so far.
It has.
We've explored the limitations of research, the importance of self-advocacy, and the need for that systemic change. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to hear from you, our listeners.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on all of this? How do you see this gap between research and reality playing out in your own lives or in the lives of autistic people you know?
So, building on what we were just talking about, the gap between research and the real lives of autistic adults, I thought we could dive into some specific examples from this website about where those disconnects really stand out.
Yeah, let's get specific.
You might be wondering, how does this actually impact me?
Right.
And these examples, I think, can help paint a clearer picture.
I think so, too.
Okay, so one area where this disconnect is often really apparent is in social interaction.
Okay.
Research often suggests that autistic individuals struggle with social skills.
Right.
And this can lead to isolation and difficulty forming relationships.
Right. Yeah, I've heard that.
And you might have even come across articles that present this as a defining characteristic of autism.
Right. It feeds into that stereotype of autistic people being antisocial or lacking empathy.
Yes.
Which we already know is not true.
Exactly.
But this website, it seems to offer a different perspective, right?
It does.
Okay.
This website really pushes back on that narrow view of autism.
Okay.
They point out that many autistic adults report having really rich and fulfilling social lives, but those connections might look different from what society typically expects.
So it's not that autistic people don't value connection. It's that they might approach social interaction in ways that don't fit into those, neurotypical boxes.
Precisely. One of the writers on the website talks about how they thrive in smaller, more intimate social settings.
Well.
They find large gatherings kind of overwhelming, and they prefer, deep, meaningful conversations over that superficial small talk.
Right, and I think a lot of people, regardless of whether they're autistic or not, can relate to that.
Exactly.
So if you're listening to this and you're an autistic adult and you're like, yeah, I get that, you're not alone.
You're not alone.
This website validates those experiences and really encourages you to, embrace your own unique social style.
Yeah, and it also underscores the importance of open communication in any relationship.
Right.
If you're finding certain social situations challenging, just being upfront about your needs and preferences can help create a more comfortable and enjoyable experience for everybody.
That makes so much sense, yeah.
Another area where I think this website provides a really valuable real-world perspective is in the area of sensory sensitivities.
Okay.
This is something that research often struggles to fully capture, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, research might quantify the number of autistic people who report sensory sensitivities, but it doesn't always convey the intensity of those experiences.
Right.
And how they can really impact a person's day-to-day life.
You're right. It's a lived experience.
Yeah.
And this website, it offers these firsthand accounts from autistic adults that bring those experiences to life.
One of the stories I read on here was from an autistic individual who described the feeling of fluorescent lights as being like needles poking at their brain.
Wow.
And that's such a powerful image, right?
It is.
Because it highlights that these sensitivities aren't just minor annoyances.
Right.
They can be so debilitating.
Exactly. And that's where that disconnect lies.
Yeah.
Research might categorize sensitivities as a symptom.
Right.
But for autistic individuals, it's their reality.
Yeah.
It affects every aspect of their lives.
Right.
Their work, their social interactions, their ability to just exist comfortably in the world.
So if you've never experienced those sensory sensitivities, this website really challenges you to step outside your own perspective and try to understand the impact that these sensitivities can have
That's huge.
on an autistic person's daily life.
Yes, it's about recognizing those are real neurological differences that need to be accommodated and respected.
You know, and speaking of different ways of experiencing the world, this website also offers some interesting insights into special interests.
Yes.
Research often frames it in a very particular way, wouldn't you say?
Yes, research often focuses on the intensity
Right.
or the fixated nature of these special interests.
Right, or even labeling them as obsessions.
Yeah, exactly.
But this website kind of flips that perspective, right?
It does.
It highlights those positive aspects,
Oh,
the passion, the joy, and the intellectual stimulation that these interests can bring.
exactly.
There was one article on here that shared a story about an autistic adult whose deep dive into a particular subject led to them becoming like a recognized expert in their field.
That's awesome.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And it's a perfect example of how special interests, when they're nurtured and supported,
Yes.
can lead to incredible achievements.
It's true.
So this website challenges us to view those deep dives into specific topics not as distractions or deviations,
Right.
but rather as valuable expressions of who someone is and what they're passionate about.
It's about recognizing that those interests can be sources of strength, motivation, and even career paths for autistic individuals.
And I think there's something so beautiful about that.
Me too.
This website really encourages us to celebrate those unique ways that autistic individuals engage with the world and to see those differences, not as deficits,
You're right.
but as valuable contributions to our society.
Well said. So we've touched on some really important examples of how research can sometimes, miss the mark when it comes to capturing the lived experiences of autistic adults.
Yeah, and I hope our listeners are starting to see that this disconnect isn't just about semantics.
Right.
It has real-world consequences.
Yes, it does.
For autistic individuals and for our understanding of autism as a whole.
When research fails to accurately reflect the realities of autism, it can lead to misunderstandings, misdiagnoses, and missed opportunities for support.
And it can perpetuate those harmful stereotypes that limit the potential of autistic individuals.
Absolutely.
And create barriers to their full participation in society.
So it's really crucial that we continue to challenge those outdated narratives and amplify the voices of autistic people, ensuring that their lived experiences are at the forefront of our understanding of autism.
It's about bridging that gap
Yes.
between research and reality.
By centering the lived experiences of autistic individuals in everything we do, from research to education to policy to everyday interactions.
Because their stories are not just anecdotes.
Right.
They're valuable data points
Yeah.
that can inform our understanding of autism
Yes.
and help us create a world that is truly inclusive and supportive.
This whole deep dive has really made me think about the power of perspective. The way we view autism, the way we frame it, the language we use,
Yeah.
it all has a huge impact on how autistic individuals are treated and how they see themselves.
That's such an important reminder
It is.
that language matters, representation matters.
Yes.
The stories we tell about autism have the power to shape the reality that autistic people experience.
Exactly.
So we need to be mindful of the narratives that we're putting out there
Mhm.
and make a conscious effort to center the voices and experiences of autistic individuals.
And ultimately, it's about recognizing that creating a more inclusive and supportive world for autistic individuals benefits everyone.
I love that.
It's about embracing that neurodiversity and celebrating the richness and complexity
Yes.
that different perspectives bring to our society.
I think that's a great point to end on.
Yeah.
So to our listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of adult autism.
Yes. Thank you.
We've explored some really challenging topics, but hopefully you're walking away with a deeper understanding of the complexities of autism, the disconnect between research and reality, and the importance of centering autistic voices in everything we do.
It's been great diving deep with you all, and we encourage you to continue this conversation, to learn more about autism from autistic people themselves, and to be an advocate for a more inclusive and accepting world for everyone.
We'll see you next time.